You might be wondering what you're looking at. Well, I'm actually just laid down, just thinking about the Lord. Haven't went to sleep yet since worship tonight. Just been thinking about His goodness, how good He is. And talking to my coworker today and sharing with him the first time I felt the Lord talk to me. I was 18 years old. I was homeless. I had went to this little church thing, and I was broken before the Lord. I just was broken. We were sitting all the way in the back, in the middle, with people on both sides of me. And I felt the Lord speak to me that day for the first time ever in my life, and clearly in an audible voice, tell me to step out by faith and go up there and have them pray for me. Step out by faith. Step out by faith. And I said no. Well, if you think about the length of a basketball court, the altar was about a half length of a basketball court away. And the head praise and worship leader at the time, the room's dark, the only lights are on or at the altar. She gets off the stage in the middle of praise and worship. The lady continues singing the song, and she walks all the way into the back, tells people to get out of the aisle, grabs me and takes me to the front. I knew that day I heard God clearly, because what I just heard, I said no, and then God said, no, you're coming. After that time, my life had never been the same. I began to learn about the Lord. I began to learn and fall in love with Him. I began to read my Bible, but I don't remember who it was in the Bible who was reading the Bible, but he didn't have an understanding of it. And I was reading and I didn't quite have an understanding, but I was having this desire and this burning for the Lord. But I was still struggling with anger, depression, wanting to do what I want, not to listen to nobody, just living life sinfully, smoking weed every day, sex, fornication, everything, just living a sinful life. And because I was hearing the Lord, and I was trying, I messed up and I got in trouble at this place. I was trying to do things. And let me backtrack. Before I got in trouble, after that encounter, about a week later, some Catholic priests tried to do an exorcism on me. I found myself in their office, laid down on a couch with them, sprinkling holy water on me, saying, "What is your name?" No power. Sorry to say, but those individuals had no power in Jesus. At that time, I was laid on that couch. I was sitting there thinking in my head, I want to say something just to mess with them. And then another thing went through my head. Nothing's wrong with me. And I remember them giving me some, and I'm a Christian. I believe in Christian beliefs. Catholics believe in what their beliefs, Muslim believes in what they believe, but I believe in one true God and one true Savior, Jesus Christ. But so they gave me some holy water, which is a mixture of oil, water, and salt, and told me to sprinkle it everywhere I got. I didn't. I drank it. It didn't do nothing for me but give me the runs. But point being, after that, I found myself broken again. I found myself falling in love with God and falling in love with the Lord, and then I found myself on the streets again. And it just so happens that I found myself on the streets, and it was 12 o'clock at night. There was a pill bottle on the ground. Ooh, I downed every pill in that bottle. And I told myself if them pills didn't kill me, I would go and jump off the Mobile Bridge, because I was in Mobile, Alabama at the time. And I remember sitting there, and a guy walked by at like 12 something night and asked me a question and told me some place to go to get like some homeless ID and this and that. And then he kept walking. at around 6 something next morning. Now, let me tell you this, them pills I took didn't get me sick at all. I threw up once and literally didn't get sick at all. And I took over 30 pills out of a prescribed bottle. Don't even know what it was. And then at 6 something next morning, 6, 7 something, somebody walks by and they'd say the same thing that the person walked by 12 hours pretty much said. Earlier, 6, 12 hours earlier, whatever the case may be. It was just earlier. And so the little scripture I knew, because I knew Paquito scripture, let everything be established with 2 or 3 witnesses. So I said, okay, let me go and do what these people say. I don't know, some good might come out of it. So I moved. In that process, I ran into an older man, and I shared with him what was going on with me. He told me he knew of a place, and he made a call, and I remember I was sitting there, and I was like, and we ended up going over there, and they said, yeah, we know a place in San Antonio where we can get help, this and this and this and this and this and this. And I remember sitting there praying after they talked to me and said they might not be able to send me on the bus that day, but the next day. And I remember sitting there saying, if I don't leave tonight, I won't leave at all. Meaning I wouldn't be alive. So that night, I was on a bus headed to San Antonio. I found myself in a program called Victory Gospel Chapel. Love it. It's a great place. If you need to set your life right and get directed in the Lord and you can't change anything like that, they can help. They can help establish a prayer, reading life, and a relationship with the Lord, and guide you and direct you along the way. But in the process of time, I found myself falling in love with Jesus. I served in that ministry for 3 years without even working or anything, and I was just in the church, cleaning, helping out, doing anything that I can, participating in that. One of the happiest moments in my life. I got discontented. I got tired of seeing other people, in God, come to God, get married, get jobs, be blessed, something I should have been joyful about. I found myself discontented in. I should have been joyful about seeing people get saved and God move in their life in such a miraculous way. But instead, I found myself discontented, angry, displeased, mad, like this individual is against me, that individual is against me, that individual is against me. And then I got in trouble and got sent to another church, got sent to Corpus Christi. And while I was there, I excelled. Something happened along the way to where the pastor fell. And when the pastor fell, they put another pastor was put in place, and something happened. I don't know what it was. Something happened. I ended up walking away again. Smoking weed, hanging out with the wrong people, doing the wrong things. I found myself one day in the garage of a homeboy's house I was working with. We were smoking a little blood. And then he had some of that K2 or whatever stuff it was, because we didn't ran out of the bud, and so I smoked it. I don't know what happened. I only know what I was told and afterwards. He told me that I went stiff, I went to speaking in tongues, and then I fell over. Unresponsive. I will say this. I believe God saved my life that day, and I was on my deathbed. Because I remember everything except for one thing. I could not move my body, could not open my eyes, I could not do anything. All I could hear was everything that was going on. And when the ambulance pulled up, I came to. It's like whatever it was lifted, like it knew. I ended up leaving West Virginia, ended up leaving Corpus, Went to West Virginia following a woman. There was no God involved in that at all. Just no God. We might have wanted to go to church, but we never did. We did once or twice, let me phrase that. Along the line, me and her, I found along the lines, her hands were on me, and I don't hit women, and I walked away from that relationship because I wasn't going to do that. I found myself in my own apartment again, just smoking weed, living life, and then I found myself rock bottom again. I was living for about a week I stayed in a shack, a cement shed in a hill and on an abandoned property in the mountains. And on this property, it was odd because there was a lot of dead animals. But I found myself in that shack, staying warm, freezing temperatures outside, not telling nobody that's where I was living, and walking to and from work, doing what I had to do. I ended up moving in with a coworker and his dad. Things were going good for a while, still steadily smoking weed. But when you know God and you've had an experience with God, God won't let you run. I'm all the way in West Virginia, over 2,000 and something miles away from where I first met God, where I was serving God strongly. I can't find it to this day, but I had made a testimony when I was 18 and I had met God and talked about how he had changed my life, how I was raped, how I was abandoned, how I was rejected, how I just was so angry and bitter as a child, how I went through foster care, from foster home to foster home, from being adopted to after I was adopted to being sent to there to there because no one knew how to deal with my behavior, and basically almost giving up then, being in mental institutions, crisis centers, and then everything. But all along I was telling everybody nothing was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. I just needed Jesus. What man was saying wrong with me wasn't what was wrong with me. I needed Jesus. And when I had Jesus, my life changed. My life changed. But along the process of time, I found myself in West Virginia again, this and that. And I came back to San Antonio. I'm put this in there. I can't go into details because I don't remember the dates. I don't even know why it's bloggy in my mind. But somewhere in this, I ended up going to Killeen and being under another pastor and learning and teaching, and me getting in trouble and him falling right after I get in trouble. I don't know when that was, but the point being, I ended up back here in San Antonio. And being back here in San Antonio, I ended up running for Jesus. I was serving God. I was doing the things of God. I was just loving God in the church I was going to at the time, and how they would set up different, we call them fellowships, banquets. It's basically so you learn how to speak to a woman, or a woman can learn to speak to man. You can communicate with each other and learn not to lust with chaperones, almost, you could say. And in that, which was very, very good, to start out with, being fresh in Christ and not knowing really how to, know how you're supposed to look or know how you're supposed to, something like that was pretty good. But I found I ended up being part of the worship, they had a banner team where we would do dance and stuff, and that didn't know nothing about dances, knew nothing about waving a banner. But because I had a fear of being in front of people and had a fear of not knowing how to do certain things, I made myself do that, to step out of my fear of being in front of people and to put myself in a situation to where I didn't know much, but something I wanted to do, but where I would have to rely on the Lord to learn. I was moving in faith. I was trusting the Lord. And I was praying for, of course, men being single, we praying for wives, straight up. And I remember the pastor, they had a thing, and the pastor told me, she said, I got somebody I want you to meet. You gotta be nice. You gotta be nice, Jeffrey, now, I'm telling you. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I remember she put emphasis on it. And I remember when I met Elena for the first time. I don't know how to describe it. But the first thing that went in my head when I saw her, before we even spoke and we were standing right next to each other and hadn't quite introduced each other to each other just yet, first I heard a voice in my head said, you're going to marry this woman. Down the line, me and her fell into fornication. The day we fell into fornication, we stepped out of it. We went to our pastors. We didn't tell them we fell into fornication. We told them we just wanted to get married. But I kind of think they already knew. But we wanted to go ahead and get married. They ended up leading us to the courthouse because you have to have paperwork from the courthouse, and we just did a courthouse wedding. And we got married. But we went to church maybe twice after that. And that's when we fell off. And I remember it was in the first New Year's after we had got married, and Elena came to me and she was like, do you mind if I smoke? She said, do you mind if I drink for New Year's? And I was like, no. I was like, oh, I don't know. Because how you were and how you said you were and how bad it got for you. But then I was feeling guilty, because I was smoking weed and I hadn't told her. She didn't know. And so I couldn't really say no. And so I said, if you can handle it. But then I used that as an excuse to bring my sin to the surface, as well as justify me doing wrong because you're doing wrong. And I started smoking weed out in the open then. And her drinking became out of control, and my weed smoking became out of control, and it came to the point to where it was stressful. I would go to work and I wouldn't know if I was going to come home and she would be dead. I'd go to work and then come home and our son hadn't been fed all day because she was passed out. I love her. I loved her dearly. I really care. And I thank God for this day. I thank God that she is in heaven. The day before she passed, 2 days before she passed, I remember I was frustrated and angry. I was irritated, dealing with her detoxing and the convulsions, and worried about her and work and my son and life in general. I remember, and honestly, this is something I had to deal with for the longest time. And this will be the first time I think I publicly said, I might have shared this to one or two other people, but for the longest time, I beat myself up for this. And I'm not talking about the yes for drinking things. I'm talking about the power of your words. I remember one day I was coming home from work. It was already a stressful day. I knew I was coming home dealing with her being drunk at home. And I remember sitting in that car screaming at God to help me. I remember screaming and saying, why don't you let her pass away already? Because I can't handle this anymore. Now I loved her and I would never want anything to happen to her. A month later, after seeming like she was through the detoxing and almost done, she was doing good. She had just prayed and the detoxing seemed clear, but the damage was already too late. The convulsing stopped, but her heart rate was stuck, and she refused to go to the doctor for like a couple days her heart rate was like at 180. I didn't feel it was right. I kept telling her she needed to go to the doctor. She didn't want to go. I remember one day, the night she passed away, she asked me if I can get her water from the refrigerator so she can have something to drink right there outside the bed. It's your wife. You love her. When you love somebody, it's not you don't feel, you just do it. You don't feel stressed. It's like when you love God. When you love God, it's not hard. It's not hard. It doesn't become hard. It becomes so much more easier. It's hard to follow rules, but it's easy to love. Get out of that cold shit. But what I'm saying is, and honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to post this. I probably will, and then might end up deleting it. But basically, when her heart got stuck up, I ended up smoking a blunt that night, sitting on the side of the bed. I got in that bed and I went to sleep. We said our good nights, kissed each other, and went to bed. The next morning I woke up, and just like you roll over, to see your loved one next to you, I rolled over to see my loved one next to me, her eyes wide open, tongue hanging out of her mouth, dried wet spot on the pillow where her tongue was, hands twisted at a weird angle, and her eyes just looking dead at me. I freaked. I knew then already what it was, but didn't want to accept it. Tried to wake her up. Couldn't get her to wake up. Called 911. The operator on the line, I was breaking and crying at the time because the operator had me take her off the bed and bring her into the living room so the EMS could get to her easier when they got there. And he had me start doing compressions and stuff on her. But I remember when I pulled her off the bed, at that moment in time, I knew what had to happen immediately after we went to sleep. Because you could tell that a slight rigor mortis or whatever might have kicked in, because she wasn't flexible, but she was flexible, but you could tell there was tension. And I remember doing chest compressions and crying. Didn't even know why I was doing it with the ambulance lady on the phone, but was doing it. And I remember my son was in the crib at the time crying, and CSI was on the TV at the time. No, Criminal Minds. And it was just a struggle. Brian Walton. He's married to Tiffany Walton. They don't live here in San Antonio anymore, but he lived in the same apartment complex as me. And at this time in my life, me and my wife were not going to church like we should. He was. And he remembered, and we were friends from church, and he would encourage me from time to time because we worked together. The police officer asked me if I could call somebody that could come be with me while they were dealing with the scene of my wife in the apartment. And I called. I didn't have nobody I could call. The only person I could think of that was close by, that I had someone I could reach out to, was him. And when I told him, no questions asked. He came downstairs. He came from his apartment 4 o'clock in the morning to my apartment. It was on a Sunday morning. And stayed there with me while they took her out, took her situated, offered for me to go back to his apartment with him. Told him no. He offered for me to go to church with him that morning. I told him yes. That morning, I did not go to church with him. That morning, I left before and went to church. But after that, I dropped the ball. It hit too hard. My son immediately was hospitalized. He ended up having heart surgery. And then other issues ended up popping off. And I ended up just smoking weed. Ended up moving back to Florida for a short time because I couldn't handle it anymore. I would get help with my parents and whatnot. me and my parents were there, and they were helping with my son, and got my son in daycare. We got a good, decent little job. But my desire was to be back here in San Antonio. Side note, anybody you will talk to, I've come to find out that this is very true. I'm not going to say anybody, let me rephrase this. A lot of the people that I have talked to that are from Florida, that live here in Texas, we all have come to the conclusion, the ones that I've talked to, that the people here in Texas are way more friendly than those in Florida. I love Florida. I love the beaches. I love family. I love everything about Florida. There's a lot to do there. But the people in San Antonio, the culture, just, I don't know how to describe it. And plus, this being where I grew my foundation, where I began to walk with God. And this, I don't know how to describe it, but I long to be back here. And then some situations happened where my parents basically, when my dad they wanted me to move out, and pretty much gave me a time limit, and I felt like I was cornered, because the whole time I was there, I was saying that I was going to move back to San Antonio, that I wasn't going to stay in Florida. But at that time, I felt cornered. I began to feel pressured, like I was being backed into a corner to do something that I didn't want to do. And what happens to a dog, or what happens to a cat when it's cornered? You come out, attack it. At that point, the relationship between me and my dad began to digress. We began to argue more, began to fight more, began to get into it more, began to just... And so, one day, I got tired. At the time, I believed this was a good decision. But it didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out. But when God's up to something, God's up to something. I made the decision to take my son to my father-in-law, because he had offered, when Elena passed, to look after my son for 6 months to a year or whatever, so I can get good and going. But my wife just died, and my son's in the hospital. No, man, I ain't gonna do that. Basically, he tried to get me to sign over my rights to my son when he was in the hospital. I flat out refused. I wasn't gonna do that. But where were we? Site, son, hospital. Okay, yes, hospital. And so we're at the hospital, and, I'm not living for God anymore. I'm already, doing what I need to do. My work, daycare, Florida, parents, cornered. All right. Yeah. And so I ended up I took my son to my father-in-law, because he had said that, so that I can get established in San Antonio and whatever, and get back on my feet. I went back so I can get back on my feet and get established. And so I went back to Florida to continue to maintain my job, to get a couple more checks in and whatnot, so I can do what I needed to do. But I didn't move back in my parents' house. I chose to stay in my car and at a motel in Ruskin. And then I lost my job. Didn't lose my job. They actually asked me to do something that I was not willing to do, because I was dealing with all this stuff that I was just shared with you in the middle of that. They said, "Oh, we want you to go get checked, like mentally and stuff," because I was dealing with crap. And this was after I met Jesus, and after I seen Jesus transform my life. I never argued with him, never said anything to him, but I never went back, because I refused to go somewhere that I knew that wasn't my problem at the time, that I needed Jesus, because I was walking in sin and walking away from him and not doing as he pleased. So of course, when you're not pleasing God, it might be good for a season. Sin is pleasurable for a season, but in the end it's death. Yeah, you might be happy today, but you have the hangover tomorrow. Yeah, but you know what I mean. So basically the point is, I know I needed more Jesus. and to be back with Jesus. And that's when I came back here to San Antonio again, and started working and stuff, this and that. Got good established in church, was serving hard in the church. Like, I would get off work at 5, be at the church by 5:30, and not leave the church until 10, and go back to my apartment Monday through Friday. Saturday mornings, I was up at 6 o'clock and at church, picking up bread donations to bring back, helping out with little yard sales and different things that were going on there, hanging out. But the devil came in. One day, after 10 o'clock at night, after helping out in the nighttime prayer, I got in my car and I went to drive to my apartment. Earlier that day, a thought came through my mind. Hey, why don't you get a vape? God delivered it from you. Get a vape. Just hit it a couple times. You'll be able to throw it away. I said no. But that night at 10 o'clock after I left the church, I was on the way home. And it started going through my head again. Over and over and over and over. And then it said, you're going to pass a store. It's right there by where you live. No one's around. It's too late for everybody from the church to see you. So I got it. And well, I wasn't able to just quit. The Bible says, don't be so entangled into the bondage which you were set in before, whatever it is. But I allowed myself to get tangled up again. Allowed myself to get tangled up in vaping. And that vaping, because at that time I wasn't smoking weed. At that time, I was sober. At that time, I was serving Jesus and living a life really pleasing to Him, striving to please Him. And once I opened the door to vaping, it opened the door to the legal THCA, THPP, that stuff that was legal and could be sold over the counters, which then led me back all the way back to weed, which then led me out of the house of God once again, or in trouble to where basically it came to the surface I was smoking weed, this and that. And so I went to the little sister church and was there, and well, that's where I am now. Not there, but that's where this story first began, talking to you guys. I found myself in a motel room after feeling like I wasn't being heard at the church with something that I was struggling with, and being told that I needed to move from one house to another, and knowing in my heart that I wasn't ready for that move, knowing in my heart that I wasn't built up enough spiritually, that in that move I was going to fall, or feeling in my heart, whether it was me, the devil, or God, whatever it was there, and I didn't trust myself. But I was put in a position to where I was told I either move or leave. And I was trying to stay saved. Even though I knew I was eventually going to fall, or even though in my mind at the time I was thinking I was going to fall if I moved there, I went ahead and did. But I did make up in my mind that day that I was going to save up and move, because I felt that my salvation and where I needed to be at that time was very important, and me going over there was more of a money thing than important. But in the end, I ended up just turning away from church and God all around. I allowed myself to, well, how should I put this? A girl that I had dated for almost off and on for like 2 years, basically the door opened up, and that had been closed for several months, and I took that door. I found myself at her apartment in her house, staying the night. And then the next day I left. And then I left, and the next thing you know, I was feeling rejected, and alone. Situations dealing with her, back and forth, cutting me off, then turning to me, cutting me off. Then the situations where I wasn't being felt like I was being heard at the church. Was trying to serve and couldn't serve in certain areas and was struggling in the inside of me. And then finally I just said, screw it. After the situation with my son and finding out what my father-in-law did and how he hurt my son and how the situation with my son was put in foster care in Georgia and I'm all the way here and there's nothing I could do because the ladies there have to communicate with the people, with some other people who have to communicate with the people here who have to get in contact me, and going back and forth with this for almost 2 months of voluntarily buying drug tests myself and sending them to them, participating in classes in Georgia on my phones and stuff here just for a court to take place and my son get placed where. And the whole time there was nobody reaching out to me from here. And so I felt in my mind that was their intention the whole time, was never to do that, for them to go the easier route. And so I gave up. That point in my life, I hit rock bottom. At that point in my life was bottom. Anywhere lower than that was me digging a hole. I was going through with depression, going through mentally, was in the church cutting myself. In the church contemplating suicide. In the church, depressed because this relationship that I had off and on with this girl for 2 years after the death of my wife fell apart. And to come to find out that she was struggling with the same things that my wife was struggling, that the things that I thought she was struggling with, that I was calling out, was actually happening. And I was being lied to the whole time about it. But the point being, because we all need Jesus, every last one of us. And honestly, I care for everybody. People I don't get along with, people I do get along with, people I've dated, people I don't dated. I want everybody to make it to heaven. I want everybody to go to heaven. I don't care who you are. You deserve something better than what's here on earth. In order to get there, you gotta accept the invitation of Jesus Christ into your life and pursue Him. But at that moment in time, I was broken. I just lost my son. The girl that I was talking to, it went to hell. The situations there I was staying, I had just asked to be involved in a certain ministry. It was shut down. And then relationship with my parents was rocky. And at that point, I walked away. I got a hotel room with intentions on killing myself. Cut everybody off because I didn't want nobody to know what I was going to do, what I had to do, what was on my mind to do, what I had fully intended on doing. Moved my stuff while everybody was in class or not home, so they wouldn't know. Went got that hotel room and started smoking weed and got on that bed, and I couldn't. I sliced and sliced and sliced and sliced. I have scars on my legs as a testimony for what God would not allow me to do. When I say that, meaning, that's not, He wouldn't allow me to kill myself. I would cut myself over and over in the same spot so I could get used to the pain, so I could slice my wrist. Would Google suicide just for suicide prevention to come up. Google quick ways to die for suicide prevention to pop up. Painless ways to die for suicide prevention to pop up. And I found myself there in that bed, on that hotel room, legs bleeding, one little slice on my on my little arm, but it wasn't deep at all. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. And I only say this was the Lord because I fully intended on it when I moved to that hotel room. But it didn't happen. But a lot happened in that motel room that shouldn't have happened. That now, I don't know how to describe it. There was stuff that just God protected me from. Got stuff that I allowed in that I shouldn't have allowed in. Stuff that I didn't allow in and didn't allow in. I didn't talk to a lot of people, but a couple people while there. But I remember one night. This what lust will do to you. I was standing at that door and there was a young lady sitting on the steps and she looked like she was in tears. Like she was like this and that, on the phone. And I was standing there smoking a blunt and I asked her what was up, this and that. She said she was waiting on a ride. And I just offered, hey, you can come in here so you can be out of the cold. And chill, until your ride or whatever gets here. She said, all right. She took me up on the offer and she came in. She was there and we didn't do anything. Not at all. Not one bit. In my mind, did I want to do something? Yeah. When I invited her into the room, because I wanted to do something. Because I wanted, maybe something would happen between us. But no, she went to sleep and then I sat in the chair and went to sleep and then I had to go to work the next morning and they were still there. And so, because they were very respectful for the short time that they were there that way while I was awake, I was like, okay, look, you can stay, but don't let nobody in here at all. Until your ride comes, at least, this and that. Well, needless to say, I ended up getting a call getting a chat text on my PlayStation app on my phone saying that my hotel room was being raided by the police. Me, what the hell's going on? I only smoke weed and I don't do anything but smoke weed and I don't really do anything. I'm talking about I finally got a hold of somebody and found out that apparently people were going in and out of that room all day and whatnot. And basically, after all was said and done, when I get back to the hotel, I have to I'm praying on the way back to the hotel, Lord, I can't get booked out. I can't get no place to go. What's going on? I just went to work. So I get there and come to find out the young lady had invited certain people in and this and that. And certain people ended up having warrants and they were running from the police and they ran up in my room while they were running for the police. And the police ended up having to shoot out the room, pepper-balled it and everything. Everything in the room was pepper-balled. I'll actually post the pictures alongside this video. But I didn't know what to do. The hotel room, thank God I knew it was God. He knew that I was telling the truth because they had cameras and this and that. The police officers that arrested them 3 people that were in the room while I was not there ran my name because my room was in my name. Me, like I said, I haven't really been in any trouble, so my name came back cleared. Those 3, they let one of them out. The other 2 they took off, and the motel, they ended up moving me rooms, put me in another room under a different name, and I had to pay back the damages to the other room, even though it wasn't because of me and I wasn't present, but in order for me to stay there, I had to pay it back because the room was in my name. And so I did. And I don't know what happened, but along the way, there's an individual there that works there that, well, needless to say, they offered me. They were getting a trailer, them and their wife, and, for me to come stay over there. Pay so much in rent, this and this and this and that. I said, yeah, immediately. Because after everything that just happened at the hotel, I wanted out. I didn't want to be in there anymore. And so, this is where I came. I moved into the trailer, and I was dating a girl at the time, It was cool people, but, we started getting into it because of, I'll leave that alone. But basically, her grandfather invited me to church. And I said no. I didn't like the way I was dressed and looked. And then one day, I forgot what it was. What happened? I don't know what exactly happened, but I had it set on my mind to go to church. Literally, I had it dead set on my mind to go to church. And next thing you know, when I went to church that Sunday, Cross of Victory, the pastor preached the message. And when he preached the message, he tapped into the prodigal son. The lady up at the top, she spoke something, and the other guy, he spoke something during the worship. And both of what they said, was, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, hearing the thing about the prodigal son on the church day, I come back to church, I'm like, Lord, I know you're speaking. And then, there was things that were said that, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like an inner thought or inner feeling, just, you knew the God spoke it. You knew just God spoke it. And then, as they were worship services going on, I was crying, broken before the Lord, tired, this and that. God showed me. You remember when you were in foster care? I was with you. The church service you went to, I was with you. Remember you when you got adopted? And you wanted to go to church? Because you wanted to go to church, your adopted parents went to church. Yeah, later on, they used church as discipline because you wanted to go, they wouldn't let you. And then when you didn't want to go, they made you. But, yeah. And then he was like, when you were homeless, I called you out of darkness. When I called you that day. And they just showed me different things in my life that he was there, that I thought he wasn't present. And I broke there because I'm like, Lord, okay. I get caught up in myself and forget that you're here, and I do me. And I'm like, I'm going to try to live for you. I want to live for you. I want to give my life back to you. I need you to help me every step of this way. Because I had every step. Because, how should I say it? Solomon talks about it. How much knowledge can produce great sorrow or something like that. And it's very, very true. Because I've learned a lot of word. And I don't boast in that. Because the more word I've known, that word condemns me. Not doesn't necessarily condemn me, but I don't know how to say it. To know the right thing to know. To know the right thing to do and not do it unto you it is sin. And because I knew all this and knew this was the right thing, it was basically sin, and I knew I wasn't doing right before God. And so when God was showing me that no matter what I went through in life, he was there. When I was 18 years old and was drugged and woke up in that closet butt naked and raped, he was there. When I tried to kill myself, he was there. When I accidentally took too many pills in high school, just because I wanted to try to get high, a friend of mine went home and told her grandmother, who went and told my mom, who went and got me and took me to the hospital and charcoaled my stomach because it was too many. He was there. When I was in that hotel room wanting to cut my wrist, he was there. When I felt abandoned, I felt rejected and felt alone when my wife died, he was there. He was there in it so much that My son heart issue was a blessing from the Lord because it took my focus straight from my grief and my wife to having to keep pressing on for my son and going to and from work. He showed me he was there. He showed me that at my work he was there. He just showed me that everything I was been through, he's there. It's just me that doesn't acknowledge him, and because I doesn't acknowledge him and because I choose to sin, I take that sin like a brick wall. Smoke, one brick. Weed, another brick. Anger, another brick. Bitter, another brick. Cussing, another brick. And I built a wall up in between me and the Lord. But he was still there. And then another blessing. As I started going back to this church, I came home from church one day and a revelation dropped. Lamplighter. Lamplighter is the name of the trailer park I stay in. And where it is located is kind of in a cut. Most people don't even know it's there. In the industrial district of San Antonio. But basically, Lamplighter, the cave of a doodle. Lamplighter. I came home from work one day, from church, and the thought went through my head, lamp. Because we're supposed to be lamps for the Lord, keep our oil full and stuff, and, just keep living for him, because you never know when he's going to return. We're supposed to be a light for him. Lamplighter gave me the indication of lighting a lamp. And then the cave of Adullam, where all the people came to David that were in distress, that were going through, and this and that. He was needed there. And then lamplighter, lighting a lamp, reigniting my life for Christ. God showed me that where I'm at now is where I need to be because he's reigniting my life for him. And in this season of my life, he's reconnecting me to him and in the kingdom of him. I won't lie and say it hasn't been easy. No, because before I went back to church, I was on dating sites. I was smoking weed every day. I was on Moco and other things, and for all the wrong reasons. And then even after giving my life back to Christ, I wiped those things away. But I slipped up once or twice and put them back on my phone just to delete them back off and whatnot, because I'm like, I want to do the right thing. I want to live for you, Lord. And so where am I? What was the whole purpose of this? It was to share my life story and to share with you guys what the Lord has brought me through and brought me from, and what he's doing in my life continuously. And I continuously see God move. Something you hear all the time: obedience, obedience, obedience. Well, I come to find out that being obedient opens so much more doors for God to move that it's just, I don't know how to describe it. I would always go to work with headphones and playing my own worship music and listening to this and listening to preachings and stuff. Told me one day not to. So next day I DoorDashed, was it DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever it was, a job site speaker from Home Depot, and started playing music and stuff through it. And he ended up sharing with me that he liked it and it was peaceful. My other co-worker said that he could tell the atmosphere different. A customer came in that day, and as he was leaving, he said, "Have your way, Lord." And I stood there and I was like, watching this happen around me. And the thought went through my head: if I wasn't obedient to my boss and kept my headphones on, the same music that was ministering to me wouldn't minister to them. And so like I'm learning to be completely obedient. There are things that are in my heart to do for the Lord, and I don't know where to start, where to begin, but if it's God, it will open up. Because sometimes we can get so caught up in serving that, like Mary and Martha, we forget that the greater thing is our worship, is our life. Because we get so caught up in the servitude that we forget to have the heart of Jesus while we do it. And so, whatever you get from this, you get from this. The whole point of this is just sharing to you the goodness of God. God can bring you back from anything. He can do anything. For example, it's 3:09 in the morning, and I'm sitting here talking to you about Jesus, talking to you about what He's done for me, and just been in a spiritual high, you could say, since worship tonight. Tonight, something happened tonight that I cannot explain, but I felt the change. I don't know how to describe it. The wonderful working power of Jesus Christ. So it doesn't matter what you have been through in your life, what you are going through, or what's ahead of you. God is there. And God will be with you every step of the way. Am I in the clear? Not at all. Not at all. I'm in a process of being healed and restored unto the Lord. To removing sinful things in my life as they come along. And to learn to fight things as they repop back up to try to resurrect. Nah, dead things must stay dead. Only Jesus can resurrect. And so now I am just in a place to where I want more of you, Lord. This is where I'm at. I want more of God. When I first came back to church, I was at that service. I was at the Lord's Land event, the next event. And then with work and this and that, I found myself being overwhelmed. I was like, Jesus, you gotta help me. Show me what you want me to go to, what you don't want me to go to, and everything. Because I'm overwhelmed and I'm trying to do the right thing. And then I kind of backed off for a second. And then it's just like, I don't know. The last two things I went to, I knew it was God that led me to. And definitely tonight was definitely the Lord. Because I was already convicted about not going to church yesterday. And then ended up doing this. Ended up lifting up the name of Jesus. And it was awesome. And just like going there and just hearing the word, hearing them speak about Jesus, hearing the praise and worship, hearing the testimony, and then seeing how much I could relate to everything that was going on. It was like just a blessing. And then, I don't know. This is to be continued. Just know that God loves you. Jesus loves you. And He can get you free from anything. I don't know if anybody's gonna listen to this, or if you might listen to this, or if it might sound like junk and you turn it off. But oh well. I'm just sharing with you the love of Christ, that He's changing my life, and the same change that He is bringing into my life, He can bring into your life. Don't give up. Keep pressing forward. If you're thinking about ending it, don't. If you're thinking about walking away from God, don't. If you're a man and you're not in your place as a man of God in your family, don't. Get in place. Don't be in that place to where you're not in place in your family. Because if the man's out of place, the wife is displaced and the kids are misplaced. If the man is not doing what he's supposed to do in his marriage, He's not providing the covering he's needed for his wife and his family and his kids. Just like Adam in the garden with Eve, he didn't provide Eve with the covering. And he was right there with Eve when she got the fruit and the devil was speaking to her. That he ended up taking part of it because he wasn't in place. So yeah, man of God, get in place, stay in place, and strive to be there. Because you don't want to get everything you want. You don't want to get that business. You don't want to get them wife, that kid, that car, that loved one. You don't want to see the kingdom of God grow by your hands. And for you to just have everything stripped away because you got so caught up in the blessing that you got pulled away from the blesser, and then not you caught up in the blessing, you're trying to bless the blessing instead of the blesser. The next thing you know, yeah. So keep Jesus first.